I'm Lena. My job is serving drinks at a large casino on the Las Vegas Strip. Every work night is a battle of nerves. I have to smile at rude, drunk men who are ready to harass at any moment. But I have to keep this job because I need the money. New Year's Eve that year was especially exhausting. Around 10 at night, I dealt with a rude, drunk customer. I used my experience to calm him down, accepted the tip, and immediately used exhaustion as an excuse to leave early. As I was changing to go home, I got a text from my best friend, Abby. She pleaded with me to come to the luxurious suite she and a group of friends had rented for a New Year's party. The most convincing reason for me was that Josh would be there. Josh was a cute bartender I had been seeing recently. We hadn't made the relationship official yet, but we both had feelings for each other. Despite my fatigue, I accepted. Before leaving the changing room, I noticed an object placed on the bench in front of my locker. It was a pitch-black rose with a small, folded piece of paper clipped to the stem. I opened it. There was only one handwritten line. "See you tonight, Mr. X." I was stunned for a few seconds, then smiled faintly. I secretly hoped the sender was Josh, trying to create a romantic surprise. But I was also curious. What did X stand for? I tossed the paper into my purse, picked up the black rose, and left. I called a taxi and arrived at the Belladonna Hotel around 10 p.m. The building glowed with lights right on the main avenue. The hotel lobby was packed, the sound of New Year's music and laughter echoing everywhere. I squeezed through the crowd, trying to inch into the elevator. Suddenly, a tall figure in a black coat stopped right in front of me. He wore a mask shaped like a blank, expressionless white face, revealing only his eyes. He stood still, staring straight at me for a few seconds, then turned and disappeared into the crowd. I shook my head, trying to ward off the chilling feeling. As I entered the elevator, the advertising screen mounted on the wall flickered. In a fleeting instant, I saw the image of the man in the black coat appear. I was startled, but the screen quickly returned to normal. I told myself, it must be exhaustion. Arriving at the suite, I immediately went to the private bathroom to freshen up. I locked the door. Instantly, the wall-mounted TV shut off and then turned back on. The face of the man wearing the white mask appeared, looking straight at me. I froze in shock. I could feel him smiling through his eyes. Then, he slowly spoke. "Hello, Lena. Does my black rose please you?" A shiver ran down my spine. He not only knew my name, but also confirmed he was X, the one who sent the flower. The initial feeling of being special vanished, replaced by horror. I stepped back and gathered all my courage to ask him a question that was almost meaningless in this situation. But it was my last hope. Are you Josh?" He didn't answer. The image on the TV switched to a video clip. It was Josh sitting in the living room. The camera slowly moved, showing Josh leaning close to Abby's ear, whispering something. Abby giggled, her eyes full of hidden meaning. His voice was challenging. "Did your best friend call you here to see this?" I was glued to the screen. Josh and Abby were together for too long, too close. All my psychological defenses collapsed. I only felt jealousy and anger. Suddenly, the image on the TV shut off. I stood in a daze. It was just a prank, I told myself. Some weirdo hacked the TV. I tried to reapply my lipstick, regaining my professional appearance. My hand was still shaking slightly, but I tried to create a shell of calm. I took a deep breath, intending to step out, but the door wouldn't open. I tried turning the knob forcefully again, but it was locked from the outside. Is anyone there? I knocked on the door, but no one answered. The feeling of being locked alone in the silent bathroom was suffocating. My mind kept swirling with images of Josh and Abby being intimate together. I clenched my fists, my whole body restless, as if trapped in my own helplessness. I don't remember how long I was trapped until the music outside suddenly cut off. Then the countdown sounded. 10, 9, 8. I jumped up, banging hard on the door. Is anyone there? Please open the door. I'm stuck in here. I screamed in despair. Just then, the TV screen mounted on the wall lit up again. Happy New Year, Lena. I looked up, staring at the screen. It showed something. I squinted. It took a few seconds to identify the shape. At first, I thought it was a strange leather mask, but it wasn't. It was a person's face skin, a real layer of face skin peeled off with raw muscle tissue still clinging to the edges. Blood streamed down from the bridge of the nose to the chin. A ringing sound went off in my head. I backed away, clutching my chest. The screen was still brightly lit, exposing everything. How do you like it now that I have the face of the one you like? I felt instantly numb when I heard that sentence. Looking at the hair color and the small scar near the temple, I realized with horror, it was Josh. I let out a long scream. I rushed to yank the doorknob. This time, it opened. I dashed out of the bathroom like a maniac. I ran out into the hallway and collided hard with Abby. When we recognized each other, we both looked utterly panicked. Josh is dead, Abby stammered out. We clung to each other, screaming in panic until we were helped by hotel staff. The police quickly arrived. Josh's headless body was found. I told them everything about Mr. X, the rose, the video. It all sounded insane. The hotel handed over the surveillance footage. It only showed me entering and leaving the elevator and going into the bathroom. No one wearing a mask appeared near me. The security cameras in the casino also couldn't identify the person who left the flower. I started to doubt my own mind. 3 weeks after New Year's Eve, I was still living in fear. I didn't dare turn on the TV. I also didn't dare look in the mirror for more than a few seconds. Every time my eyes met my reflection, I remembered the mirror in the bathroom that day and Josh's face skin. One afternoon, I received a call from the detective in charge of the case. His voice sounded somewhat urgent. He informed me that Mr. X had been arrested. His name was Elias Mercer, 38 years old. He was a hacker, a stalker who had infiltrated the hotel system to monitor and manipulate me. He was also the drunk customer who had harassed me at the casino. Elias Mercer rented a standard room at the Belladonna Hotel, like any normal guest. But in reality, inside, he turned it into a control center with sophisticated equipment, allowing him to infiltrate the hotel's internal network system. It was through this equipment that Elias broadcast the chilling video on the TV in my bathroom on New Year's Eve. The police tracked him down through the unauthorized intrusion signal used to control the internal broadcasting system. When arrested, he was trying to delete data and restore the system to its original state to cover his tracks. On his personal devices, the police found dozens of videos secretly filming me at the casino, along with documents related to Josh and Abby. And he was the drunk customer who had harassed me right at the casino on New Year's Eve. I just wanted a beautiful girlfriend like you, but you chose that bartender. You have to pay the price. Just that one sentence. It summed up everything. The obsession, the insult he felt when I rejected him, even though I didn't remember his face, and how he decided to ruin me by taking the person I liked. Elias Mercer was sentenced to life imprisonment. But for me, the horror did not end. The truth about Mr. X only aggravated the pain. And I remember, why wasn't Abby wearing a party dress when I bumped into her in the hallway? Why was she near Josh's room? Although there was never any evidence, That suspicion destroyed our friendship. I lost everything. I avoid enclosed spaces with TVs. I don't get into elevators alone. Elias is serving a life sentence, and the obsession he left in me is also a sentence. I am serving it every day, living in a world where I learned a terrifying lesson. Polite rejections, or the innocence of accepting a flower, can trigger a stalker's potential violence. I still remember it vividly, as if everything happened yesterday. That afternoon, I came home from school and saw a package on the porch. It was the size of a shoebox, neatly wrapped in brown paper, and had a handwritten line in red ink. Open only at the stroke of midnight. I picked it up, feeling it was quite heavy, and there was a strange, faint smell. There was no sender's name, no return address. Only my father's name and phone number were neatly written on the surface of the package. I brought it inside and placed it on the kitchen table. When Dad came home, he looked at the package with curiosity, but not much surprise. "Probably from a client," he said, then brewed coffee and took the package up to his second-floor office. My father worked for a security consulting firm, and he rarely shared details about his job. He only said his work involved risk assessment for large companies and sometimes dealing with sensitive information. That evening, we had a cozy New Year's Eve dinner. We talked about our plans for the new year. I was about to graduate from high school and planned to apply to the state university. After dinner, Mom prepared a fruit platter and a bottle of wine to welcome the new year. Dad went up to his office, saying he wanted to look over the package before coming down to toast with the family. I sat watching television with Mom, waiting for the moment of midnight to approach. As it got closer to midnight, fireworks began to faintly sound. Neighboring families were all outside preparing for the momentous occasion. Mom called Dad down, but there was no reply. She called again, louder, but still, there was only silence from upstairs. Right as the clock struck midnight, the sound of fireworks began to boom everywhere. From the living room, Mom and I could hear the rapid explosions, mixed with cheers from the neighbors. The New Year's atmosphere filled the entire neighborhood. In the very moment the fireworks reached their peak, I felt a slight vibration, as if a door had been slammed shut upstairs. A dry, cracking sound, out of place amidst the deafening explosion of fireworks. Mom and I looked at each other. "That must have been a big firework," Mom said. We continued to sit for a while, looking out the window, listening to the fireworks echo from afar. Then Mom looked up the stairs and said, as if suddenly remembering, "Isn't your father coming down for the fireworks?" I found it strange too. Normally, Dad was the most eager to make the first toast for the New Year's moment. Mom called up the stairs, but there was no answer. She called again, a little louder this time. Still no response. We both looked at each other, as if sensing something strange was going on. Mom stood up and walked toward the stairs. I followed her. Mom opened the door to Dad's office, and then she screamed, a long shriek that tore through the air. I ran over and looked inside. The scene was etched into my mind for the rest of my life. The room looked like it had just suffered a small explosion. Everything was torn apart. The wooden desk was shattered. Hundreds of fragments and shards of glass were strewn about. Blood. Blood was everywhere. There were large spatter marks on the walls. The ceiling was stained red in patches, and droplets of blood were still falling. On the floor, pools of dark red blood were spreading, sticky and heavy with the metallic stench of iron. It was my father. I couldn't recognize him. His body was blown apart, scattered, with pieces of his remains strewn across the room. A hand lay helplessly under a chair, and a torn shoulder and shirt were draped across the desk. The acrid smell of burnt chemicals mixed with the chilling, metallic odor. I closed the door with a trembling hand. Mom collapsed onto the floor, screaming. I held her. My mind was blank, but my hands found the phone and dialed emergency services. For some reason, my voice was so calm, as if all my emotions had been frozen by what I had just seen. The police and ambulance arrived within 10 minutes. They didn't allow me or Mom back into the office. We were asked to move to the living room by a female police officer. I just sat there, holding my mother, who was shaking uncontrollably. The subsequent investigation confirmed the package was a homemade bomb detonated upon opening the box. This was a targeted assassination. But they couldn't find who sent the package. No fingerprints, no camera footage, no witnesses, and most importantly, no clear motive. My father's company fully covered the funeral expenses, settled the insurance quickly, and even offered to sponsor a vacation for my family to find peace after the tragic event. But when I started asking about my father's actual work, they clammed up. We cannot disclose the information. It violates security regulations, the HR representative told me over the phone. The detective in charge of the case told me directly, they are only doing the bare minimum. They don't really want us to know what your father's real job was. I tried to find out more. I searched through Dad's papers and emails, but most were dry technical documents, risk assessment reports for companies I had never heard of, no threat letters, no obvious conflicts, only work. The case was never solved. No one was arrested. The person who hired the assassin was not found. After a year, it became one of the cold files, cases that the police still keep open, but are no longer actively investigating. The detective called me to apologize, saying he had done his best. I believe him, but it didn't help. My mother sold the house and moved away, saying she couldn't continue to live in a house where every corner reminded her of that horrible moment. Over time, the pain didn't disappear, but just became easier to live with. But I never forgot, and I can't forgive the person who murdered my father and that company. The people who knew the truth, but chose to remain silent. They hid the things that could have led to justice. 2 psychologists warned that this resentment would destroy me from the inside, but I can't let go. I don't believe in letting go when the truth is still out there somewhere. I think those people are the ones who deserve to be ruined, not me. Now I have my own family. My wife knows the story, and she never asks more when she sees me silent. We have 2 children, and I try my best to be a good father, just as my father was. But every year, when the holiday season arrives, I remember the fireworks that night. I remember the dry, cracking sound that was drowned out by the noise of joy, and how the silence of justice destroyed my family more than the bomb itself. I'm Chasey. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings, and my little sister Lauren is 8. This is the unforgettable story of me and my sister's crazy and scary Christmas Eve last year. My family wasn't like those TV families with a Christmas tree loaded with presents or a cozy dinner by the fire. My dad worked hard, but we were still struggling with money. My mom, who was really my stepmom, drank a lot and barely cared about us. That Christmas Eve, my dad drove 3 hours to work. My stepmom got drunk and passed out in the afternoon, leaving us to take care of ourselves. I still wanted to make a good memory for Lauren. I'd saved up some money from my part-time job to buy Lauren a little gift, a dog keychain she really liked. When I gave her the gift, Lauren's eyes lit up, and her big smile made me feel like all the effort was totally worth it. Lauren surprised me even more. She gave me a handmade card with a thank you note and cute little drawings. A weird, warm feeling spread through my heart. We sat next to each other, all curled up in a big blanket, eating popcorn and watching Christmas shows on the old TV. Everything felt calm and happy. But then, there was a sudden knock at the door. Lauren jumped up and yelled, "It's gotta be Dad," and ran toward the door without thinking, but I quickly pulled her back. Before he left, Dad had told me real seriously, "Don't open the door to anyone, especially on Christmas Eve. That's when bad guys can take advantage of things." Lauren still wouldn't listen and kept trying to run to the door. She looked through the peephole and shouted, "It's Santa Claus!" "Chasey, open the door!" But I felt a sense of unease rising in my heart. I looked through the peephole and saw a guy in a red suit and a Santa hat. But the look in his eyes was nothing like I'd imagine a nice Santa would have. His cold stare at the door made my skin crawl. I pulled Lauren away from the door, trying to sound firm. "You can't open the door. That's not Dad, and it's definitely not Santa." The guy outside started using a sweet voice, saying he just wanted to give us presents. But I wasn't fooled. I yelled through the door, telling him to leave. Instead of giving up, he got even more patient. The knocking got louder, more regular, and kept going. He pulled some stuff out of his pocket and started messing with the lock. My heart was pounding, and Lauren was shaking as she clung to me. I pulled Lauren over to the landline to call my dad, but the phone was dead, and my sisters and I just got more and more freaked out. At this point, I decided to call 911, but the operator didn't believe me and thought we were just messing around. I felt totally helpless and hopeless. Meanwhile, Lauren ran upstairs to wake up her stepmom, but nothing could get her to wake up. Lauren ran back down, hugged me, and then just broke down in tears. Outside, the sound of the door being broken down kept getting louder, and the creepy guy's laugh sounded like he was enjoying watching my sisters and me freak out. I had to come up with a way to fix this situation. I looked around the living room and stopped when I saw the smoke alarm on the ceiling. An idea popped into my head. I decided to create an emergency so the fire department would come and help us. I grabbed a roll of tissue, lit a small candle, and held it up to the smoke alarm. The fire alarm went off loud, and about 10 minutes later, I heard the fire truck siren. We sighed in relief when we saw the headlights shining through the window. But what was even crazier was the guy outside the door suddenly yelling really loud. He said he was our dad, pretending to be Santa Claus, but got stuck outside. His voice came through urgently, asking the firefighters to break down the door. The fear that hadn't completely gone away hit me even harder. My hands were freezing, but the worry about my sister's safety and mine made me feel stronger than ever. I knew that right then, I had to act fast. I remembered the family photo hanging on the wall in the living room. I quickly grabbed the photo, ran out, and cracked the door open, holding it up with shaky hands. I told the firefighters everything that happened. The guy outside wasn't my dad. He was a scammer who'd tricked us and was trying to break down the door. When the firefighters gave him suspicious looks, the creep immediately turned to run but got held back. The police were called right away, and the guy was quickly restrained. Once the situation was settled, the firefighters called my dad's work to let him know about the emergency. My dad came straight home that night. When he found out what happened, he was really mad. He and my stepmom got into a huge argument and then decided to get a divorce. My dad said that me and my sisters were the most important things in the world. My dad also switched jobs so he could spend more time taking care of us. That Christmas Eve was super scary, but it also made me realize how much power and responsibility I have as the oldest sister. And most importantly, it brought a change to my family, a new start to a better life, one without fear or lack of love. I am Steven, and the terrifying story I am about to tell took place during the recent New Year, so I remember every detail clearly. Peter, my best friend from college, asked me to come house sit and take care of his beloved dog. Peter was someone with a higher income than me, and his house was spacious and well equipped. He was going on a New Year's trip with his family but couldn't bring his dog, Jax, and didn't feel comfortable leaving him at a pet hotel. I agreed to Peter's request since I didn't have any special plans for the holiday. I don't have any relatives other than my mother. When I was 18 and started university, my mother remarried, and I was happy to see her happy with her choice. Peter said I could invite my girlfriend over if I started feeling bored. He looked at me with a knowing smile after saying that, and then burst out laughing. I stayed at Peter's house for 2 days, and the first night was uneventful, nothing out of the ordinary. I just lay on the sofa, watched a few movies, and played with Peter's dog. The second night was also New Year's Eve, and I felt a sense of loneliness creeping into the air, amidst the distant sound of fireworks and the darkness that enveloped the unfamiliar house. Though I tried to enjoy the special atmosphere as the moment of the new year approached, I couldn't shake the feeling of isolation, a touch of sadness lingering within me. I decided to invite my girlfriend over. She said she would be a little late because she was having dinner with her family. It was around 10 p.m. I was lying on the sofa and absent-mindedly yawning a few times when I heard a knock on the door. I thought it was my girlfriend, so I happily ran to open the door. But standing in front of me was a completely unfamiliar girl. She introduced herself as Peter's girlfriend and said she had come to collect a few things she had left behind in his bedroom. I stood frozen for a moment, staring at the girl, but it wasn't her that caught my attention. It was the surprise that overtook me. I was surprised because Peter had never mentioned having a girlfriend in any of our conversations. We were very close and shared everything. I couldn't believe that he had a girlfriend and never told me about it. However, the girl seemed confident and at ease, as if she really knew Peter and this house well. Still, I remained cautious and tried calling Peter to confirm instead of letting her in right away. But the call went unanswered. He was probably busy with the party. I didn't want to make things difficult for the girl, especially since she kept insisting that she was Peter's girlfriend. After a moment of hesitation, I decided to let her into the house. She quickly made her way to Peter's bedroom. I stayed in the living room, watching TV. But honestly, I couldn't shake the feeling of curiosity, and there was still a bit of surprise lingering in my mind. A little while later, she came back downstairs, thanked me, and left without taking much. I sighed in relief, telling myself that I had reacted a bit too stiffly and skeptically. I returned to the dog and resumed watching the show, trying not to focus on the confusing thoughts in my mind. About half an hour later, my phone rang. It was Peter calling back. The sound of music, clinking glasses, and laughter. He was still having a great time at the New Year's party. Peter was concerned about his dog when he saw my 2 missed calls. After hearing me talk about the girl from earlier, Peter was silent for a moment. He stepped away to a quieter spot and told me to explain everything clearly. "Steven, I don't have a girlfriend," Peter said, almost shouting, filled with surprise, panic, and I could sense a bit of frustration at my carelessness. Immediately my head spun, as if a bell had rung right next to my ear. Peter asked me to describe the girl in detail. I tried my best, but I couldn't remember much, just her body shape and a bit about her hair color. Peter sent me a series of pictures of the girls he knew, and none of them resembled the woman I had met. I kept the phone with Peter and ran up to his room. The valuable items he described, like the laptop, car keys, and watch, were still intact. Peter sighed and remained silent for a long while. He was probably feeling uncomfortable and even disappointed. As for me, I felt guilty for ruining the joyful moments Peter was having. I stayed awake almost the entire night, feeling confused and terrified, blaming myself a lot. I called my girlfriend and told her not to come, as I didn't want to cause any more trouble or discomfort for Peter. The next morning, Peter returned earlier than expected. Even though he didn't say a word of blame or show any signs of frustration, he actually thanked me a lot. But I still couldn't shake off the heavy feeling inside me. In the days that followed, things didn't get any better. One morning, Peter woke up and noticed signs of someone else being in the house. The front door was open, even though Peter was sure he had locked it before going to bed. Some small items had been moved, as if someone had been rummaging through them. A sense of fear filled the house, and Peter decided to call the police. I was there to explain everything that had happened on New Year's Eve. No belongings were stolen, and there were no signs of a break-in from the outside. But the scariest and most haunting feeling is knowing you are being followed, but not being able to figure out who it is. I had no idea what her intentions were, or what terrible things might happen next. Every night, Peter would hear small sounds echoing through the house, the sound of the floor creaking, footsteps softly padding on the carpet, as if someone was stealthily moving around the house. Sometimes Jax would bark frantically, but when we checked, there was nothing to be found. The atmosphere in the house became incredibly tense and suffocating. Due to work commitments and other relationships, Peter decided not to move to a new place, but to find a solution instead. Peter decided to install the most advanced cameras both inside and outside the house, and from that point on, the strange events ceased. The police continued to monitor the situation for several more months before officially closing the investigation. However, both Peter and I were still very confused, not knowing who that girl was and whether she was the intruder or if there was another mysterious figure involved.
My name is Ethan. I live alone in a small town in the southern United States. My work takes up a lot of time in a day. I have to leave the house at 8 a.m. and return at 7 p.m. The area around my house was quite empty until the last few months. A family of a young couple and their daughter moved in. They weren't very friendly, so I only greeted them briefly in some first meetings. When I came home from work in the evening, I saw a little girl sitting on the side of the road wearing thin clothes in the cold winter. After a few questions, I realized that the girl was the child of a young couple next door. The girl was about 5 years old, shivering, her eyes fixated on the ground. When she heard me ask, she just looked up, looked at me with innocent, puffy eyes, and did not answer. I was about to help her stand up, but suddenly her mother's scolding sound came from afar. She is Kate, about 35 years old, with a thin body and some bruises on her face. I greeted Kate in a friendly manner, but she ignored me. She roughly pulled her daughter into the house and scolded her repeatedly, causing her to cry in fear. That night while I was sleeping, the sound of the couple arguing and a loud cry of the neighbor's daughter woke me up. This wasn't the first night like that. Since they moved in, I was often bothered by loud arguments. I'm quite uncomfortable. It's been a long day of work, so I really want to rest. But it's a private matter of their family, so I'm not feeling comfortable about reminding them and instead choose to keep quiet. The frequency of the couple's arguments is increasing. They use harsh words and insult each other. Sometimes there is a mother's yelling at her daughter, followed by her loud crying. I feel sorry for her when she has to live in such an environment. A few days later, that house felt strangely quiet. They must have resolved their conflicts, I thought. Another evening, I came home later than usual. On the dirt road leading to the house, I saw Kate's daughter again. This time she dressed more warmly. The little girl no longer sat with her head down, holding a toy shovel and diligently digging down the dirt road. I approached her and gently asked her what she was doing here. Her face was much brighter. Her innocent voice answered me, "I dig graves to bury people." That innocent voice told me that I was following my mother's actions the previous evening. I looked towards the neighbor's house in fear. Kate's figure standing in the door startled me. Her eyes were sharp and a bit angry. Kate slowly approached, pulled her daughter's hand, and went into the house without saying a word. Early the next morning, I heard loud crying and a very strong banging on the door. Hurrying to open the door, I saw a little girl with messy hair and disheveled clothes crying loudly while pointing towards her house. A series of questions arose in my mind. Walking towards the house, I immediately felt a cold chill run down my spine. In the house's messy living room, Kate hanged herself, her body floating, her face pale. I felt like my body was frozen shut, so scared that I couldn't move. My mind went all blank. My ears were ringing. The girl's cry pulled me back to reality. Immediately, I smelled a terrible stench. Taking the girl back to my house, I quickly called the police. After investigation, the police concluded that Kate's death was due to her hanging herself. Even more horrifying, they discovered Kate's husband's body buried behind the garden. The body was determined to have been dead for about 5 days and was decomposing. Kate herself attacked and murdered her husband, and then she ended her own life. Kate's daughter fell asleep in my arms because she was tired. Looking at the poor girl, I felt sorry for her unhappy childhood and having to witness so many terrible things. The girl was taken to live with her aunt in rural California, 300 kilometers from her old home. I think her parents' married life is not happy. The bruises on Kate's body are most likely caused by her husband's violence. Kate only acted spontaneously when she murdered her husband, due to the life of too much pain and repression she had endured in the past.
Name's Richard, but folks just call me Ricky. I've been with the Anne Arundel County Police Department in Maryland for over 12 years. My old man was a cop too. To me, this badge, it ain't just a job. It's a promise to protect, to serve. But I never imagined that promise would shove me face first into the most gut-wrenching moment of my life. The kind where you have to choose your life or somebody else's. It was one of those mornings. Light rain, kinda chillier than it should have been. I threw on a thin jacket and headed out for my morning shift. Halfway through, the dispatcher came over the radio. Distress call, Oak Ridge neighborhood. Caller was a woman named Beverly Sess, mid-50s, said she was being held hostage by her own son, named Danta. The son had some serious mental issues, violent episodes, and unpredictable behavior. Me and my partner, Mike Garcia, were sent out right away. On the drive over, we got an update. Danta says, 20 years old, prior run-ins with the law, resisted arrest more than once, history of aggression. We rolled up to the address. A plain, single-story red brick home. Looked totally normal. None of the neighbors seemed to suspect a damn thing. I knocked, announced myself as police. Nothing. But there were sounds inside, low, muffled. We got Beverly back on the line. She whispered, barely audible, that Danta had her locked in the living room. Wouldn't let her open the door. We followed protocol, kicked in the door, weapons drawn. The place was pitch black. Took a few seconds for my eyes to catch up. That's when I saw her, Beverly, slumped on the couch, face swollen and purple, barely holding it together. And right next to her, Danta, standing stiff like a loaded spring, eyes burning with rage. We shouted the command, "Hands up! Get on the floor!" Garcia moved in toward Beverly, tried to shield her. I kept my gun steady and held my position with Danta. At first, he gave in, dropped to his knees, hands in the air. I stepped in, cautious, trying to cuff him, not letting my guard drop for a second, and then all hell broke loose. Just as I reached in, he twisted fast, like a damn switch flipped, and launched at me. Next thing I knew, I was on the floor, his full weight slamming into my chest. Gun flew out of my hand. First hit came down hard, right across my cheek. Then another. Whole room spun like a carousel. Garcia didn't hesitate. He dove in and tried to yank Danta off me. They went at it. I scrambled back to my feet and threw myself into the mess. All three of us crashed into the coffee table. Things exploded under us. We were in a full-blown brawl. I grabbed for Danta's arms, trying to lock him down, while Garcia went for the cuffs. And then a bolt of pain shot up through my left hand. Danta had sunk his teeth into my finger. Not just biting, it was crushing. I could feel it. The teeth slicing right through the skin, right down to the bone. The pain was unreal, sharp, hot, blinding. For a second, I thought I might black out. Blood was pouring from my hand. I tried yanking it back, but Danta's jaw was like a damn vice grip. He wasn't letting go. With my right hand, I reached down for the backup piece strapped to my ankle. I didn't want to do it, but I was out of options. Felt the handle in my grip. I raised it and pulled the trigger. The shot tore through the living room like a grenade. Danta's jaw finally unclenched. His eyes went wide, shocked, not scared, and then he dropped, hit the floor hard. Garcia was already on the radio calling for EMS. I sat up, clutching what was left of my hand, blood soaking my sleeve. Across the room, Beverly started screaming, over and over. More units rolled up. Then the paramedics. They checked him. Nothing. Danta was gone. They loaded me into the ambulance. 2 fingers just gone. Docs at the hospital said infection was a real risk. Could be permanent nerve damage too. What really stuck with me, what still sticks with me, was the look in Danta's eyes as he went down. And Beverly, her screams dug into my bones. It hit me right then. I'd taken a life. 2 weeks later, she filed suit. Against me, against the department. Local media pounced like vultures, ran headline after headline. Some of the guys I work with had my back, said I did what I had to do, didn't matter. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. People spewed hate like it was sport. Murderer. That's what they called me. For their safety, my wife packed up the kids and moved in with her folks out of state. 6 months. That's how long I sat in a therapist's office trying to make sense of it. My finger? Yeah, it healed more or less. Still stiff. Still throbs like hell when the weather shifts. And when the coroner's report finally came through, clearing me of all charges, no wave of relief, no moment of peace, just silence, emptiness. They said I acted by the book, said I did everything right. But someone still died, and deep down, I still feel like I screwed it up somehow. Some stories you never really forget, no matter how hard you try to bury them. My story began when I was 6 years old, in a small house tucked into the Appalachian Mountains of eastern Kentucky. It was a place where my parents' arguments echoed every night. At 6, sleepless nights were normal for me. I'd pull the covers over my head, praying for my parents shouting and the sound of breaking things to stop. This night was no different. They were fighting about money, my dad's drinking, and our family's grim future. I lay curled up in bed, pressing my face into my pillow to muffle the cruel words coming from downstairs. Suddenly, I felt a gentle tap on my shoulder. I jumped and looked back to see a figure standing beside my bed. In the dim light, I saw they were wearing a white nightgown, and I immediately thought it was my mom. The figure didn't say anything, but gestured for me to follow them. I sat up, confused why my mom would be in my room when she was still fighting with my dad downstairs. The person walked slowly toward my open bedroom window. The night breeze blew through, making the thin curtain flutter. They turned to look at me, their face hidden in shadow, and pointed outside the window. I hesitated for a moment, but then climbed onto the windowsill. What happened next, I can't clearly remember. My memory has been erased, leaving only a dark, empty space. I woke up at the base of my bedroom window, lying in a pile of dry leaves and twigs. My body was freezing, and my arms and legs were covered in small scrapes. I shivered, from the cold and from fear. I ran into the house, crying, and asked my mom why she let me sleep outside. Her face turned pale. She had no idea what had happened. I told her about the woman in the white nightgown, but my mom insisted she hadn't come into my room that night. My parents were terrified, thinking it could have been a kidnapper, and called the police. But the police found nothing after they investigated. From that night on, my parents checked the locks on my window every night before bed. My dad even nailed the window shut to make sure I couldn't open it. When I was 11, things got even worse at home. My dad became a severe alcoholic, often coming home in the middle of the night. My mom became more withdrawn, spending most of her time taking care of my younger sister. I felt forgotten in the middle of all the fighting and emotional distance. One morning, after an especially bad fight, I decided to run away to make my parents worry and realize how badly they had treated me. I snuck out of the house while my mom was rocking my sister to sleep, and my dad was passed out drunk. The Appalachian woods spread out behind our house. I walked about a half-mile deep into the woods until I found a big rock to sit on. My plan was simple: wait here until it got dark, then go home when my parents were panicked from looking for me everywhere. What a childish thing to think. Around noon, I heard footsteps. The sound was distinct, dry leaves and twigs crunching under someone's feet as they got closer. I thought it must be my mom looking for me. "Mom!" I yelled, my voice filled with hope. The footsteps immediately stopped. The forest became eerily silent, and a shiver went down my spine. I stood up and looked around for a bit before sitting back down. It was probably just an animal. A little while later, I started to regret my stupid decision. I saw a figure at the edge of the woods. It was a woman wearing a blue shirt. I immediately recognized it as my mom's favorite shirt, but her face was hidden by some trees, and the way she stood and moved was strange. Her movements were jerky, like a puppet being controlled by clumsy hands. The woman gestured for me to follow, then turned and walked deeper into the forest. I hesitated, but followed, thinking it was my mom. She moved so quickly and never said a word or looked back at me. Every time I tried to catch up, she seemed to get further away. We went deep into a part of the forest I had never seen before. I was exhausted and kept calling for my mom to wait, but there was no response. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath me, and I fell into a deep crevice about 15 feet down. Pain shot through my knees and elbows, along with some scrapes from the sharp rocks. I sat up, terrified, as I realized I was stuck in the ravine and completely lost. I yelled for my parents until my voice was hoarse, but only my own echo came back. Darkness started to cover the woods as the sun set. I huddled, shivering from the cold and fear. Exhaustion finally made me fall asleep. I woke up, and it was pitch black outside. I had the strange feeling that I was sitting in someone's lap. Something sharp was lightly scratching my cheek like a long fingernail. I froze, not daring to move. Slowly, I looked up and saw a familiar figure leaning over me. At first, I thought it was my mom, but as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I realized it wasn't my mom. The face had a huge mouth but no eyes or nose. When I looked at it, the mouth stretched into a wide smile, showing a set of sharp black teeth. A terrifying laugh came from it. I scrambled to grab onto tree roots and rocks to climb up, not daring to look back. Finally, I heard my dad's voice calling my name from a distance. The sirens of the police and a search and rescue team echoed through the forest. They found me at 2 a.m., delirious. When I got home, I told my parents about the woman that lured me deep into the woods. My parents looked at each other with worried eyes. They didn't say anything, but I knew they believed me. 2 weeks later, we moved from Kentucky to Ohio. I heard my dad on the phone with someone, talking about how 3 other children had gone missing in those mountains over the past 10 years and had never been found. Even now, at almost 40 years old, I believe that thing tried to lure me twice. The first time, it almost succeeded. The second time, it had me in its grasp. I'm so grateful that I was luckier than those missing kids. You can learn 2 things from my story. First, don't be a foolish kid and run away from your parents. And second, don't follow strange things into the Appalachian woods.
I'm Marcus, and my wife Stella. We live in Austin, Texas. We've been happily married for 10 years, got good jobs we both love, and a steady income. My wife and I have spent a ton of money over the years trying to find our little angel. We've been willing to try it all. The big hospitals, small clinics, and all the latest reproductive treatments. God must have seen how hard we tried, because after 4 years, Stella and I just broke down and hugged each other tight when we saw those 2 lines on the pregnancy test. But then, "Marcus!" Stella yelled, totally freaking out, and it made me jump. I looked around and couldn't find Stella. The bathroom light was on, and my wife was just crying her eyes out. I rushed into the bathroom, and my heart dropped when I saw Stella sitting on the floor in a pool of blood. So, that little angel was only with us for less than 2 months. I didn't even get to find out the baby's gender yet, Stella said, crying and holding the ultrasound photo close. It was a huge shock for my wife and me, going from hope to happiness, and then suddenly crashing down to disappointment and sadness. After we lost our kid, Stella locked herself in her room all day, just crying and feeling miserable. She stopped taking care of herself and our family like she used to. Every time she got home from work, the whole gloomy vibe made me feel really suffocated. Stella, how about we have a fun day out this weekend? Where do you want to go and what do you want to eat? Joy Toy, can you take me there? Stella said with a straight face. Of course. I was a bit surprised, but honestly, I just wanted to make Stella feel better, so I was down to go wherever she wanted. On Saturday morning, Stella got all dressed up and put on some light makeup for our outing. Seeing my wife looking fresh and happy again made me really happy. We started to head out. 403 West 2nd Street. It's about a 30-minute drive from here, honey. Stella didn't say anything. She just stared out the window. It's been a while since we had a date, so I see you're all dressed up and wearing makeup, huh? I teased Stella a little. No. I want to go see our kid. What? I said, turning to Stella, totally surprised. She didn't say anything more. I had a ton of questions buzzing around in my head, and they just kept piling up every minute until I got to the Joy Toy store. As soon as the car stopped, Stella jumped out and rushed into the store, totally ignoring me yelling after her. I quickly hopped out and dashed into the store, checking out the big, colorful space. Stella! Stella, where are you? I just yelled out. As I zipped along the toy shelves, I glanced around and suddenly got chills. The lullaby was soft and sad, kinda like a cold wind. It crept through the toys with big eyes and a smile, giving me the creeps. Stella! I yelled when I saw my wife holding a doll and softly singing a lullaby. I went to stop my wife because the other guests were giving her weird looks and whispering. Stella, what are you doing? I whispered. Marcus, keep it down. Mikey's sleeping, my wife said, giving me a disapproving look. What did you say? Mikey? Our son, look, Stella said, holding the doll out to me. He's got my eyes, right? Stella, stop. What are you doing? My wife didn't even catch the end of what I said. She just hugged the doll and took off. I quickly ran to pay for it and then chased after her. From that moment on, my life officially turned into a total nightmare. Stella was happy and laughing again, but not with me. She was with her Mikey doll. Slowly but surely, my house got filled up with toys and boys' clothes in all shades of blue. One night, I turned to hug my wife, but in my dream, I just didn't feel her warmth next to me. A white figure with a creepy humming sound was swaying back and forth right in front of me. I freaked out, jumped up, screamed, and started frantically looking for the light switch. Turns out it was my wife. She was singing a lullaby to her little son. I felt totally helpless, and my heart was still racing with fear. For a bunch of nights in a row, I was always sleeping on edge, feeling panicky. That really messed with my nerves big time. Little by little, I started hearing kids crying and laughing, and the sounds of toys turning on. It felt like there was a real kid living in the house, even though I was all alone. Everywhere I looked, there were these colorful, cute toys with big round eyes that were dark and deep, and they totally creeped me out. I hated them. One time, I had just come home after work, and my wife was soothing the doll. And the creepiest part, it was crying. My head was spinning, and I opened my eyes wide to take in what was happening in front of me. My wife, looking totally out of it in panic, was trying to soothe this dirty, torn-up doll. I yelled loudly, tried to hold Stella down, shoved her in the back seat, and rushed her to the hospital. The days Stella was in the hospital were also my time to chill and recover. I called in the cleaning crew to tidy up the whole house, tossed out all the toys and kids' stuff, and painted the place a brighter color. Stella got some good therapy and started to chill out. She was dealing with the hurt of losing our kid again. But I felt good because I at least got her to come back. We slowly got past the hurt, got back to work, and started living our lives again, hoping a little angel would show up soon. The awful food my kid gets every night. Me and my wife have a son, but he's been autistic since he was 4, which sucks. Even though we've tried all sorts of treatments, my son's condition hasn't gotten any better. When he turned 18, my wife said she wanted to put him in a treatment center to live. But I totally didn't agree, and we had a huge argument. My wife kept going on and on about how taking care of our son was super tough. If you think taking care of your own son is too much, then you don't have to do it anymore. I felt totally helpless, disappointed, and even desperate. After that, my wife left and never came back. Like she said, taking care of my son was really tough. He was an adult, but he couldn't do anything on his own. His mental and physical state changed too, but it was really unpredictable. But I was still gonna find a way to help my kid, no matter what. One weekend, my son woke up and gave me a piece of paper. I was pretty surprised when I saw what was on it. A list of ingredients to buy for a dish. My son can't write, so the words on the paper aren't pretty, but they're pretty clear. Especially these things can't go together. Potatoes, marshmallows, mustard, chicken, and a bunch of other stuff. I thought it was a waste of food, but to make my son a bit happier, I went along with it. After picking up the ingredients and getting home, my son was super excited and started cooking right away. He wouldn't let me do anything, so I just stood back and watched. When he finished, I had no idea what to even call the dish. It was this thick brown mess with a pretty bad smell. No way that could be called a dish. But seeing my son's happy face made me happy too. He was never this happy when his mom was still around. My son gently wrapped it in plastic wrap and put it in the fridge to keep it safe. I left it there for now and figured I'd toss it when he wasn't around. I totally forgot about that nasty dish in the fridge until the next morning. I rushed to the kitchen as soon as I remembered, but when I opened the fridge, the food was gone. The dish was washed and put under the sink. I called out to my son in a panic, like, how could he eat that? He's gonna be sick with diarrhea for days, maybe even weeks. My son came over, didn't say a word to my question, and just handed me another piece of paper. It was still a long list of stuff to buy: beef, gummy bears, celery, and so on. My son usually just writes his name with messy handwriting, so there's no way he wrote this piece of paper. I gave him a stern look and told him no. He started yelling and throwing stuff around. I felt totally helpless, trying to make my son happy again. That afternoon, Another gross-looking and smelly dish appeared, all wrapped up and put in the fridge. I was set on finding a way to toss it once my son went to bed. That night, I checked the fridge and saw it was already eaten. I started to think my son wasn't the one who ate that gross food, because I'd been keeping an eye on him all evening. Going with my gut, I set up a camera in my son's room without telling him, and put 3 more around the house. In the middle of the night, my phone got an alert from the camera I had set up facing the backyard. At first, it looked like a dark shadow, but it was really weird. I zoomed in and saw it was a guy. His clothes were all ripped up, his beard was long and tangled, and his teeth were missing, filthy. He was holding a stick and pointing it at my son's window with a creepy smile. I quickly turned to the camera in my son's room. The kid stood at the window, grabbed the paper off the stick, and shoved it under the pillow fast. I jumped up and rushed out to the backyard with my gun. At that moment, I just acted on impulse. I didn't think about the gun laws and just kept firing into the dark around the yard. "Get out of here, bastard! What do you want with my son?" I yelled, and the thought of my son getting hurt made it impossible for me to calm down. About 15 minutes later, the cops showed up at my place, probably because the neighbors freaked out after hearing all those gunshots. I quickly explained everything and showed them the camera footage. Being aware of the situation, the cops said they'd look for that guy and asked me to hand over the gun right away. After talking to the cops, I dashed to my son's room, found the paper he had hidden under his pillow, and it was just a long list of stuff to buy. I tore up the paper, and my son saw it and started freaking out. It took him a long time to calm down and finally fall asleep. 2 days later, the cops said they'd found a guy's body in an old house at the end of the block, and his description matched what I'd reported. He was homeless and not all there mentally. They figured his cause of death was food poisoning that led to severe dehydration and sepsis. After hearing the news, I felt pretty mixed up. I went to my son's room, and he was sitting there drawing with total focus. I cried when I saw him. Maybe I had been too strict about his treatment. Even though the incident wasn't a big deal, it made me realize I wasn't taking care of him as well as I could. It was really tough, but I had to accept sending my son to the treatment center and visit him every afternoon after work. My son's doing better now. He can read and write pretty well.
There are some sounds you never forget once you hear them. For me, the humming of the Cyber Chase theme song outside my window in the middle of the night is one of them. 15 years have passed, but every time I hear that tune, I still shiver as I remember that night. It was the summer I turned 8. My parents were busy with their work schedules, so they decided to send me to my grandparents' house in Burnett, Texas. I was going to stay there for 3 weeks. My grandparents lived in a small wooden house surrounded by a forest. Living with them was their helper, Aunt May, who assisted with chores around the house. The first few nights at my grandparents' house, I couldn't sleep. Everything was unfamiliar, from the smell of wood to the sound of cicadas buzzing outside. A few nights later, a new sound joined the others, a faint rattling outside my window. I pulled my blanket up, leaving only my eyes exposed, telling myself it was just the wind blowing against the window. After a while, it disappeared, and I drifted off to sleep. I still thought it was a normal sound around here, so I didn't mention it to my grandparents. The next morning, my grandpa took me and our dog for a walk. We walked along the trail that led into the woods behind the house. Our dog suddenly stopped, her fur bristling on her back, and started to growl towards a bush. "What is it, Cora?" Grandpa asked. I looked in the same direction and saw a figure standing still behind a large pine tree. I blinked a few times, thinking I was imagining things, but the figure remained there, just standing still and watching. "Grandpa, there's someone over there." But when we looked again, the figure had vanished. The dog continued to growl. "Could be a lost hunter," Grandpa said, and that made sense to me. That night, after watching Cyber Chase, I went to my room early. After talking to my parents on the phone, I got into bed to play my game console. In the middle of the night, I was woken up by a strange sound. Someone was humming the Cyber Chase theme song outside my window. I pulled the covers over my head, scared, and just lay still. When the song ended, I slowly pulled the blanket down. "Grandpa," I called out to him. "Hey, it's me. Come out here, grandson. I want to show you something cool." Maybe he couldn't sleep and wanted to show me the stars or some wild rabbits coming out to feed at night, things he often told me about. I climbed out of bed, opened the window, and looked outside. A figure stood in the dark, reaching out a hand. "Let's go, kid." I took that hand and followed. We walked a few steps on the dirt road, heading toward the forest. I felt a bit strange because Grandpa wasn't saying anything, nor did he turn to look at me as usual. The moonlight grew brighter, and I looked down at the hand holding mine. This wasn't Grandpa's hand. His hand was more wrinkled. I also smelled a strong scent of tobacco, even though my grandpa didn't smoke. I saw something black sticking out from the back of his waistband. It looked like a gun. I slowed down, terrified. Immediately, I felt a tight grip and was pulled forward. Just then, Grandpa's familiar voice rang out from the direction of the house. "Ethan! Ethan, where are you?" I immediately stopped dead. The man flinched, turning his head towards the house. In that moment of distraction, I quickly yanked my hand free and ran back towards the house. "Grandpa! Grandpa!" I screamed as I ran. Grandpa was standing on the porch, all the outdoor lights shining brightly. I rushed to him and hugged him tight. "Where have you been?" "What's wrong?" There was a man. I thought it was you, but it wasn't," I said. Grandpa held me close, then looked out towards the woods. Everything was just darkness now. Grandma and Aunt May also woke up because of the noise. Grandpa called the police immediately. They arrived and started searching the surrounding area. It didn't take long for them to find a man hiding in a drainage ditch over 300 feet from our house. The police also found a gun tucked into his pants. The man's name was Rick. He was Aunt May's ex-boyfriend. They had broken up a few weeks before I came to stay with my grandparents. Rick had followed Aunt May here and planned to kidnap me to force her to get back together with him. I didn't mean to hurt the boy. I just wanted May to understand that she needed me, Rick told the police. But the guns he had prepared told a different story. My parents drove all night to come pick me up. Although Aunt May had done nothing wrong, my grandparents felt they had to let her go. From then on, my parents rearranged their work schedules to spend more time with me. I still visit my grandparents every summer and during long breaks. I'm grateful that Grandpa woke up to use the bathroom that night and found me not in my room. If it hadn't been for his call, I can't imagine what would have happened in the woods that night with a man carrying a gun, determined to get what he wanted.